Hello, church. My name is Carreon. I have the honor here to speak here today, and we're going to be talking about the title, please, Grieving with Hope. Now, grief can be a very tough thing to talk about. I have had the most stoic machismo men break down talking about this stuff. I've had people who have never expressed an emotion, but the moment we start talking about that loved one, that tear just comes down and the waterworks flow. But as an LPC, this area is what I work best in. I've told this to some of my therapist friends and my classmates and friends. I know this is gonna sound weird, but you have to understand, I'm not a Christian therapist. What I mean by that, that's an actual classification. That is a degree. Pastor Sandra has it. If you go to her office, you will see it right there. I am a Christian who happens to be a therapist. I say that because I need you to get a little peek in my mind, right? Not everything, just a little peek. HIPAA, once again. Anyway, I need you to understand how I view things in life. I see things as a Christian, but I also see things as a counselor. So grief is super tough. As a Christian, it hurts. But as a therapist, I love grief counseling. It's so impactful because that journey that person embarks on to go feeling, and just like Pastor Sandra said, all these normal, intense emotions. They are normal. Whoever told you, if a zodiac paper sign or your sign or whatever, we don't believe in that, but whoever tells you that's not normal, they're not normal. You're normal. 100%. So to go from feeling all these normal, intense things to someone accepting and continuing on their journey with hope. Spoiler alert, you're going to hear the words hope and comfort so many times here. If someone can count, I'll give you a coffee after service. Maybe, I don't know. Now, I can only cover so much here today. Literally, if I had full control, we would be here, I promise you, like an hour and 15. I can do it, but I don't have that much time. So I can cover what I'm going to cover today, right? But however, what I don't cover here today, whatever I don't talk about, or maybe you have an extra question, I will be standing over here after service. If you have questions, please, I'm more than happy to help. But if I don't touch on a subject you have in mind, come to Grief Share, September 9th. I encourage you. And if you're saying, Mark, I don't need grief help, okay, well, maybe you do. But if you really don't, if you really, really don't, then share it. Share it to the community. It's so wonderful that Crossroads does this, not just for Crossroads embedded people. This is people for Laredo. Isn't that awesome that we have such a great resource, not just for the people of Laredo, not for the people of Crossroads, but the people for Laredo. So let's get into it. Like I said, I'm a therapist. I'm going to engage with you, so please engage back with me. If not, then, you can't leave the call. So you're stuck here with me. So, church, I ask you this. Raise of hands. Who here knows what grief is? Okay, cool. So can we put up what is grief? Grief is a natural process, emphasis on natural, that is painful, personal, and normal. Grief allows a person to come to terms with the significant loss and make sense of their new reality without a loved one. Now, I want to briefly say this. So as a therapist, right, here are some things that I've said. PowerPoint, you don't have this slide. This is something that I wrote, and I want to just share with y'all. Things as a therapist I have told my grieving clients, so you can get more of an idea of what I've witnessed and what other grieving people ask themselves. No, you are not crazy for moving on. You can be joyful and sad. Give yourself permission to be human. You are the grieving person here. Take charge. And this is the one that I love. So here's a little myth that I'm going to bust for y'all. A lot of you probably think, well, if my friend lost someone, I shouldn't ask them about them. That's terrible, right? That's going to make them more sad. No. There's nothing like a grieving person to talk about their loved one. So the question that I love to ask my clients, what was your favorite memory of them? They feel so heard and validated as a human, not this, oh, poor this person, so it's okay, they're there. But they feel like, hey, like I also have good memories. I'm going through pain, and this person wants me to express the good stuff. So these are just some things that I've said to give you a little exposure to my world. Now I want to show you this other image that I just love. I love using this. A lot of my therapist friends, when we found this image, we just dove into it. I love it so much. Can we show up the image, please? So yeah, check that out. I was gonna do it like in person, but I was like, I want a big jar, and I don't know where to get a huge mason jar, so I was just like, okay. Image. So the first line says, people tend to believe that grief shrinks over time. You are the jar, your grief is the marble. So people tend to believe the jar says the same, but your grief shrinks. This is not true. It's not. No, that is no. Whoever tells you that, like I said, cut them out of your life, or maybe block them in your life or unfollow them, because red flag, red flag, red flag. Bring them to me. Just kidding. Chucky. So, and then the second line says, what really happens is that we grow around our grief. You are the jar, your grief is the marble. What do we notice about the jar? Bigger. And what about that grief? Does it shrink? What does it do? Stays the same. That is grief. It doesn't, I was able to do this and that, boop, or I did this and that. It grows, stays the same. Natural process. So, grief is full of shocking and emotional moments. Facing the death of someone you love, which is a child, a spouse, a parent, a close friend, family member, is one of life's most difficult experiences. I don't recommend this. If you haven't been through it, awesome. If you're great, you're great. And those of you who have gone through it, know that you're in this room right now. I don't know who or what, but know you do share that experience with someone. I don't know who it could be, but know in this room, statistically speaking, we have all witnessed some type of loss. Grief will cause this sensation where your head is spinning, going out of control, because remember, all your thoughts, feelings, and emotions are just in a like roller coaster, a whirlwind, a waterfall, whatever imagery you want to think of. Everything is scattered. Grief will make your warehouse of memories, your brain, both have fond and painful memories. And that also includes your five senses. I can't tell you how many times someone has told me, I heard this song on the radio and I'm bawling on I-35, and I'm just like, wow. And this one broke me a little bit in the session, right? Like they had told me a scent of pecan pie. Their neighbor was baking. They didn't even know their situation. They got a whiff of that and they just started bawling in the middle of their kitchen. Our grief is real, everyone, and very strong. So, another question I'm going to ask you all. Who here knows the stages of grief? Okay. If you're a therapist in a crowd, you don't count. Just kidding. Yes, you do. We have to learn this. Anyways, okay. Yeah. So, here are the 5 stages. It's a lot. We have denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance, or DARPA, I believe it's called, abbreviation. So denial sounds like this can't be happening to me, to my family, in this moment. Anger, why? The big question, right? Why is this happening to me? Why now? Why them? Why this? Then bargaining, I will do anything to change this. I'll go to church more. I've heard that. I will read my Bible more. People will get on their knees and just any bargaining chip they have, they will throw it for one more lunch, for one more dinner, for one more minute with this person. And it's tough. These are stages that guide us in our grief. Depression, which is probably the second most common one. This is where, what's the point, right? After this loss. I don't see the point of it. I lost this person and I can't seem to cope. Then, acceptance. Now you're thinking, I know what happened. I can't change it. Now I need to cope. That is really healthy when we get to that point. But it's extremely hard. Extremely hard. Because when I tell my clients about that stage, it's not something you say so lightly. When we update our phones and we do the terms of services, we just say agree, 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 right? We don't even look at the terms, right? You just say agree. That's not what you do with this stage. Because when you say I accept, you're literally saying, I accept the new reality without my loved one. And you can't. We can't take it back. We can't do anything else. So when we say this stage, I implore you, take it with seriousness because that stage is tough. But another myth I'm going to bust with y'all. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. A lot of people say, if you do this, right, it will equal something really awesome. But we'll get to that in a bit. What I really wanted to say is that in these typical stages, a grieving person goes through, and all these stages exist to normalize all the moments someone will experience during their grief journey. But see, the thing with grief is that in the moment, nothing makes sense. When we're dealing with grief, we are scattered, and which makes us confused, and we tend to forget certain things. I have had people tell me they forgot to bathe, they forgot to brush their teeth, to change. We're human. We're gonna go through these intense emotions, and we sometimes even forget certain scriptural truths from the Bible. These truths are needed, and as humans, we may not be fully ready to accept it. They're very hard truths, but it's the truth. No one said the truth was going to be easy. No one says this truth. Yeah, but isn't it awesome, though, that this, even though it's like a hard truth, we need to hear it? But keep in mind that God will use these truths to help you understand what you are experiencing and to give you a place to express these emotions. Once again, as a Christian who's a therapist, I have come across so many similar situations with fellow believers who've experienced grief. So I want to take some time and address some frequently asked questions. Number 1, so am I allowed to grieve? Am I not allowed to grieve, right? I get this question so many times. So many people who have been a longer Christian than me have bigger testimonies, have done amazing things. They always ask, am I not allowed to grieve? So I get this question a lot. Church, do not feel guilty because you are grieving. Do not feel guilty. Christians do grieve, and we should. It's not something we hide away or put under the rug. This is something that is natural to us as humans that we have to do. Death is going to make us feel a lot of emotions. Death is not going to maybe, perhaps, or maybe could, maybe possibly. No, death will make you sad, and it will make you mad. There is no, well, possibly, people who are expecting the loss, anticipated grief, and those who it just happens out of nowhere. These two people still feel the same way. Even if you know it's coming, it's still going to hit you as if it just out of the blue. Glorifying God does not mean only grief with a happy face. God knows the crushing sadness of death. He really does. Glorifying God in our grieving moments doesn't mean just have a happy face 24/7 when you're around your friends, family, church, just smiling away. That does not equal glorifying. I'm sorry to tell you this, because that would say God doesn't know, so we have to be happy. But God does know the existence of death. He knows that this is painful. This is tough on anyone. in Paul, 1 Thessalonians 4, chapter 1, right here. And now, our dear brothers and sisters, we want you to know what will happen to the believers who have died. So you will not grieve like people who have no hope. Not grieve as others who do not have hope. Remember, church, keep this truth close to your heart. Because trust me, in this moment, we're being told here by Paul. Paul likes to tell us, like, how, as Christians, like, what certain lifestyles to live, right? Do this, do that. He's telling us here, hey, grieve, but do not grieve as if you have no hope. Grieve like you do have hope. Now, I know it's awesome to hear, but when you're the grieving person and you want to feel that hope, it's not going to be there that quickly. It'll get there, but we're still humans first. We're going to probably, right? But keep that truth close to your heart. You may forget it. Write it out on a piece of paper. We have so many apps. I'm a journaler. If you were to see my library, it's like books and like 15 journals. What's in them? I'll tell you when I finish all 15, right? But we are going to ask questions. Ever had a math test where I pick math because, when I was growing up, math was done a certain way, you get a certain answer. Now I've heard my nieces and nephews, math has changed. And I'm like, what math is this? What happened to my math? And they're like, well, this is the way you do it. Oh gosh, how does that get the same answer? Like, it's so intense, right? But isn't it cool if you were given a test, a question, that had one consistent internal answer? No matter your situation, it doesn't matter how you came to that part of your life. It doesn't matter the significance of, like, the nature of the loss. But isn't it awesome to know that the eternal answer that will stand the test of time that we have is hope? We have hope because we trust in Him. Amen. Although our sadness is mixed with rest, our sorrow is covered with hope. I tell you, isn't it great to know that despite this painful moment you're going through, you don't have to do a different equation so you can get hope. It doesn't matter where you are in life. Hope is always going to be your solution. Amen. More on this later. Second question. Mark, is there a right way to grieve? I get that so many times. Some people cry. Some people scream. Some people want to be left alone. Responses to grief vary. It's so many different ways. There is no correct way to grieve. No correct way. There is none. I'm not going to tell you, well, actually, if you do this, you'll get over it pretty fast. No, that's ridiculous. Because what is helpful in one moment may not be helpful in the next moment. What works for Mark may not work for Josh. Well, what works for Josh may not work for Carlos. Everyone is different. No one experiences grief the same way. So, I don't want to tell you what to do with your grief, because in Grief Share we're going to help you out. But I've learned to be more confrontational when it comes to, like, mental health and when I talk to my clients. I will give you one direction from a therapist perspective. I'll give you one do. Do take your time. There is no rush. But I will give you also don'ts. Don't rush. There's no need to rush. Take your time. There is no timetable where, actually, everyone, JK, if you give your grief 16 months, by month 17, it's gone. If you handle your grief in 3 months, it's gone. Think of the jar. That marble stays the same, regardless if you overcome it and do everything you need to do. And this one I get a lot. Don't let other people rush you. Mija, it's been like 3 weeks. Time to get over it. No, it's been too long. It's been too long. Cut them out. Don't let people rush you, because remember what I said as a therapist to my grieving clients. You are the grieving expert here. You take charge. A lot of people, I've had some young adults and family members mention, well, if someone's grieving, then what do? Well, let them take charge. Let them have the choice. They didn't have a choice in a very painful situation. Nothing is more empowering to them and let them heal than giving them a moment to just, I want to do this. Sounds good. You're the boss. Don't numb your pain. This is a part where that stage of depression really kicks in and we just want to numb. I don't want to feel this. I don't want to do this. And in Isaiah 55:2, it says it so very well. Why spend your money on food that doesn't give you strength? Why pay for food that does you no good? Listen to me. You will eat what is good and you will enjoy the finest food. That first part, it's emphasizing what a lot of people like to do. Whatever it may be used to cope, a lot of people don't cope, they numb. I won't tell you what is healthy coping and what is unhealthy. What I will say is this: if one of those things is causing you to feel more pain, it's probably not a good coping skill. The third thing that I've been told and asked, Mark, does grief follow those stages that we just went through? Remember those 5 stages we went over? Well, here's what I was going to touch on. Most people think it's a list. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Once you do all 5, you're healthy. That's it. Grief is over. This is incorrect. No, it doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that. People think, and even other mental advisors, professionals have said, these stages are simply a reference guide. It helps the person understand what they're going through, but it doesn't mean, okay, Mark, if you go through, acceptance and this and that, you're going to be fine. I have seen people go in reverse order. Instead of anger, they go straight to bargaining. Instead of bargaining, maybe they start with depression. Usually, a lot of people go straight to anger. Denial is like follow-up, but at least in my personal experience, I've seen a lot of people go straight to anger. In Psalms 23:4, these stages, right, like I said, explain certain reactions and emotions, but in Psalm, even though I walk through the darkest valley, I will not be afraid, for you are close beside me. Your rod and staff protect and comfort me. When you're going through these stages, remember this verse because it's comfort, it's hope. So now that we have a firm understanding of how our grief affects us, it's really hard. Not sometimes. It is hard to know exactly what to do when grief knocks at your door. But that's why we're here today. I'm going to give you some biblical direction. I'm going to tell you what maybe, possibly, pretty please, can you, no, what you need to do. What you need to do. Number 1, be honest about your emotions. Being Christian does not mean you put on this stoic persona, this man of steel, this, I don't feel any emotions, emotions feel me. It's just like, okay, that doesn't really make sense. All right. Well, okay. All right. Trust me, machismo, right? Like it's just, I've seen a lot of examples. But that's okay, I help them out. God doesn't want you to mask your emotions or wear a happy face mask because you know what's going to happen? One day, that mask is going to slip. That rubber band that holds it to your head is going to snap because it's wear and tear. You know how tiresome it is to have a smile? I can't even last like 10 seconds. If you have me in a group photo and you say smile, if you don't take that photo in 3 seconds, I'm already drained. I'm like, I can't, no, I'm tired. COVID did something to me. I don't know. I can't hold a smile so long, but I will for the sake of the photo. But think about that. That's just with a photo. What about with grief of really intense emotion, So he wants you to come out to him with complete honesty. Psalm speaks on how God invites us to bring not a so-so grief, not surface level grief, our honest grief with him. Psalm 34, right? The eyes of the Lord watch over those who do right. His ears are open to their cries for help. He's there. He's ready. He wants the full honesty of your grief. He doesn't want you to be like, well, God, I felt a little sad today. No, get real with it. Possibly the best therapist, other than me, to really go to those emotions. Be honest with him. I have been honest with him about really tough moments about myself and my emotional status. But he don't judge. He doesn't judge. Number 2, run to where comfort can be found. Here's where the comfort, sorry, get the counters. Run to where comfort can be found. All real, lasting comfort has its source in the Lord, because he is the Father of compassion and comfort. Your Heavenly Father, my Heavenly Father, is in charge of comfort and compassion. He exercises his loving power on earth so that comfort will be available. Whenever anyone, anytime, anywhere experiences real comfort, it is because of God, the true source of comfort. He is your comfort. And that's why I love where this point, we run to him. Go to 2 Corinthians 1:3. All praise to God, the Father, our Lord Jesus. God is our merciful Father and the source of what? Of what? All comfort. Not some, if you're in the 956, if you're in 210, all comfort. I learned area codes for this. Just kidding. All comfort. All comfort. Not if you go to Starbucks on this part and get like this drink. No, God is your comfort. Amen. Point number 3. Give away the wisdom you have received. Too many times I've heard grieving people not reach out to that other griever because they're in their mind, they're like, I'm not a therapist. I'm not a crisis counselor. What makes me qualified to talk to another grieving person? I'm grieving. Well, guess what? If you've experienced God's comfort in your time of grief, you are literally, uniquely qualified to understand what that fellow person is going through. So when that moment comes, I'm not going to tell you because it is hard. It is tough. It is going to put you in a vulnerable spot because you're going to open up, reach out to that person, grab them, bring them in and says, I understand, but I'm also going through it as well. People think, well, if they're together, maybe that's going to bum them out. No. Who better to understand what that person is going through if you yourself have witnessed it, if you've gone through it? So, when that moment comes, whatever you say or do will give that other mourner, that griever, hope and rest. Let's go back to 2 Corinthians, now 1:3, but we're going to add verse 4. We know he's the source of all of our comfort. He comforts us in all of our troubles so that we can comfort who? Others. So who can we comfort? Others. When they are troubled, we will be able to give them the same what? Comfort. God has given us. It's not, I tell you, like, it's awesome, the comfort we're given. It's internal. It is for everyone. It doesn't change with circumstances. It's consistent. I am a creature of habit. I love routines. And when I was reading these verses and I kept hearing that same word, comfort, 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 I was feeling comfort. And I wasn't even going through anything while writing this sermon. I felt even more validated that, like, well, yeah, whenever I am troubled, I can go to God because he's my source. I can have all these cool other coping mechanisms, but what's better than going to the main source himself? Like, wow, it's awesome. Thank you. I know we spoke in comfort, right? But that is what God does for you. So God gives you that comfort. He's the main source. He gives you that comfort. But what does that do for us, Mark? What does that leave me with. What we are left with is painful knowledge. Remember what I said, give away the wisdom. You have that comfort now in him. But what you have learned in your grieving time is now painful knowledge. But that is something you can pass on to others. Can you bring up the quote? When I read this quote, oh my gosh, I posted it on my social media like last year around like the holidays, because too many people that were my clients, oh my gosh, just a lot of people just still don't understand grief. They think it's a temporal thing. They think it's like a little phase, that you go through. That after the holidays, it's gone, or an anniversary, it's gone. It's always there. So when I read this, if you simply can't understand why someone is grieving so much for so long, then consider yourself fortunate that you do not understand. But for those of you in this audience that are grieving or have grieved, please know that even though it's a painful knowledge you hold, you can pass that on to others and give them that comfort. You can give them that knowledge, that wisdom. So when they go through their journey, they are solidified because they'll know God did this for this person. He's going to do the same thing for me. It is the same solution to this equation. It is not different because it's Mark or Josh or Carlos or anyone else. It is the same comfort. So, the Hope Center. Going back to that hope I was talking about, the title of this message is called Grieving with Hope. The hope we're given is extremely helpful. Trust me, it's great, but at times it may not feel like it's there. Because every time when our grief comes up, we're all over the place. But like I say again, isn't it comforting to know that even wherever you are in your grieving journey, at the very beginning, at the middle, or 10, 15 years later, isn't it comforting to know that that internal response is comfort? This is what we as Christians must do with the grief. We go through the grief, but you must filter it with hope. Grieving with hope. The loss of a loved one, when we feel it, it hurts. It's real. I know I felt it with my grandmother when I was a young kid, when they were laying her to rest at the cemetery. I was so young, I couldn't have the words to explain it, but I did have the emotions to express it. I knew I was losing someone. I knew that my reality moving forward would no longer have my grandma. But hope is what gives us stability in this world. This world will have full of disappointments. It will have conditions and terms that are just so self-centered. But the hope we have in him is one of the greatest realities of the Christian life. Go to 1 Thessalonians 1:3. Right? The hope that is described here is, in other translations, it makes it as the steadfastness of hope. So what does that hope do? It is what produces perseverance. It is what pushes us forward. Because remember, we do not grieve as we have no hope. We will grieve because we have hope in him. So then, Mark, why do we grieve with hope? Why? Tell me why. You've said hope and comfort so many times, but why do we grieve with hope? 1 Thessalonians 4:14. For since we believe that Jesus died and was what? Again, we also believe that when Jesus returns, God will bring him with the believers who have also died. So isn't that something? Isn't that something? That is why we grieve with hope, because we know that death has been defeated and Jesus can rise up. So we will be getting through our grief journey with hope, because that is what's holding on. That's what pushes us. That is what makes us understand that, okay, I can come to terms with this loss and I can move forward. In times of grief, people tend to think more about what they lost than what they still have or what the future holds. 1 Peter 1:13 says this, and we're coming for a landing, everyone. Thank you for giving me your time. So prepare your minds for action and exercise self-control. Put all your hope in the gracious salvation that will come to you when Jesus Christ is revealed to the world. Church, we are a group, we are a flock, and I want you to remember this. God has not forgotten you. He knows the pain you're going through. In the Bible, they speak so much about grief, sadness. So if you felt that nothing is understandable, who gets this? He does. There is still hope available in him. It's always going to be there. It's always going to be there for you. Peter here calls people to be ready for the day. And on that day may bring by settling their hope in God's grace through Jesus. So as we close out this sermon, I want to briefly touch on one point you may have been thinking. If you're a grieving person, or I mentioned it earlier, a big certain 3-letter question. I want to touch on this because I can't touch fully on this topic, but I'll briefly give you a tease. We are here today because in our Grief Share group, we do talk a whole session about this question. And we really get into it. And that is the big why question. Why me? Why them? Why right now? Everything was going good for Mark. Why do I have to go through this loss? Why me? And why? I hear it so many times. This question is the most natural question for those who face the death of a loved one. We will think of these questions and we may get an answer. You may not like it. But remember, lasting comfort is not found in what you know, but who you know. Who you know. That's what's going to bring you the comfort. So, after everything I've said here today, I really encourage you. Our Grief Share group starts on September 9th. When I've seen it, it's amazing. Like Pastor said, you don't have to go in there and spill your guts. If you want to, I will encourage it. I'm facilitating it. I will encourage it. But that is not a condition you must do in order to come in. But keep this in mind. Can you put up the marble slide again? How do we make our jar bigger? Those biblical directions I gave you. But after this day, for those that are grieving or are still, currently back then, make your jar bigger. Grow your jar bigger in him. Come join Grief Share. Grow your jar. When I lost my grandma, I was hurt. I was in so much pain. But as life went on, I realized the truth, the hope. I didn't like the answer because I lost my grandma so much. But then knowing that she is home, that knowing that after seeing her in the hospital, I can remember every hospital visit. I can remember the pain she was going through. So now I have the comfort. I still miss her. I'm not going to lie and say I don't miss her. No, I miss her so much. My marble remains the same, but me, my jar, it's bigger than me. I'm not that tall, but it's bigger than my physical body. So church, I implore you, grow your jar. Grow your jar. That marble is going to be in there. But I encourage you to grow your jar.
Thank you for watching. Scan the QR code to get connected. We invite you to leave a like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Don't forget to click the notification button so you can know when our next video is here.